Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this House, here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen.
Oath or affirmation. Announcements by the Deputy Speaker.
Honourable members, I have received communication from the Honourable Terence Dial Singh, MP, Member for St. Joseph, who has requested leave of absence for the period May 26th to the 30th, 2023, and from Dr. Rudal Munilal, MP, Member for Urupuch East, who have requested leave of absence from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the members seek is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. Paper number 1, the Value-Added Tax Bond Payment Refund Amendment Regulations 2023. Paper number 2, the audited financial statements of the East Port of Spain Development Company Limited for the financial year ended September 30th, 2018. Papers 3 to 5, the audited financial statements of the Estate Management and Business Development Company Limited for the financial years ended September 30th, 2013, 2014, and 2015. Paper number 6, the audited financial statements of the Development Finance Limited for the financial year ended December 31st, 2021. Sorry. Paper number 7, the consolidated audited financial statements of the Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago Limited for the financial year ended December 31st, 2016. Paper number 8, the consolidated audited financial statements of the Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited for the financial year ended September 2019. Papers 9 and 10, the audited financial statements of the CLICO Investment Fund for the financial years ended December 31st, 2019 and 2020. Paper number 11, the audited financial statements of the Trinidad and Tobago Solid Waste Management Company Limited for the financial year ended September 30th, 2019. Paper number 12, the annual audited financial statements of the Vehicle Management Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago Limited for the year ended September 30th, 2015. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that papers 2 to 12 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that papers 2 to 12 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Leader of the House.
Thank you again, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have the honour to lay the following papers. Papers 13 to 15, the ministerial responses to the 5th report of the Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration on an inquiry into the state's capacity to provide support of domestic violence and family conflicts with specific focus on the availability of support mechanisms during the COVID-19 pandemic. These responses are from the Ministries of Education, Planning and Development, and Social Development and Family Services. Paper number 16, the response of the Office of the Prime Minister, Communications to the 5th report of the Joint Select Committee on Finance and Legal Affairs on an inquiry into the implementation of a regulatory framework for the development of financial technology, fintech, and e-payments. 3rd session, 2022 to 2023, 12th Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Reports from committees, Prime Minister's questions, urgent questions, questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House.
Thank you again, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, there are 5 questions for oral response. We will be answering all 5. There are no written questions. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
I call on the member for Princestown.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, question number 163 to the Minister of Works and Transport, please.
Works and Transport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Ghat Road starts at the Guaracara Tarpaquit Road and extends for a length of 4.65 kilometers to the Naparima Mayaro Road. The section of the road from the 0 kilometer to the 1 kilometer mark is in a fair condition, while the section from the 1 kilometer to the 4.65 kilometer can be considered in a poor condition, which has deteriorated due to the age of the roadway and formation of landslips. There are currently 5 landslips along Ghat Road, located at the 0.6 kilometer, 3.3 kilometer, 3.3 kilometer, 4.1 kilometer, and the 4.5 kilometer respectively. Repairs to these landslips will be done on a phased basis as funds permit. This calendar year, the Highways Division has scheduled slope stabilization work to be done at the 0.6 kilometer, 3.2 kilometer, and the 3.3 kilometer mark. These projects are currently at the development phase with an aim to begin construction at the end of the fiscal 2023 or early 2024 as funds permit. Under the PR unit, 2 projects under the Ghat Road to Williamsville. These projects include the lamppost 60 and lamppost 119. These projects are currently at the design phase and subject to availability of funds are expected to commence in fiscal 2024. Thank you.
Supplemental, Princestown, member.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Honourable Minister, on the last occasion that this issue of the Ghat Road was raised, you had indicated that some seismic work was being done in terms of the testing of the soil and so on. Can you indicate if that has been completed?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Mr. Speaker, the fact that all the landslips are at the stage of designs, and so it means that those work, if not completed, are ongoing. Thank you.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Honourable Minister of Works and Transport, question number 164.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as stated in my response to an urgent question on April 20th, 2022, 1 year ago, Robert Village Trace falls under the purview of the Princestown Regional Corporation. It is therefore not a road under the jurisdictions of the Ministry of Works and Transport, of which the Ministry is responsible. However, notwithstanding the fact that the Ministry of Works and Transport has collaborated with the Regional Corporation to do some interim roadworks to facilitate access to the school affected by the landslips, further, I am advised that the Regional Corporation has continued its work to reinstate a sidewalk in the area. At this time, landslip repairs along Robert Village Trace are not included under the program of the Ministry of Works and Transport. However, as usual, the ministry is willing to provide technical assistance to the regional corporation if requested. Thank you.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Minister, as you're aware, the Robert Village Hindu School is adjacent to this landslip, and the Princestown Regional Corporation does not have the capacity in scope or in funding for this. I'm kindly asking whether or not you will consider funding from the Ministry of Works and Transport for this particular project, seeing that it is a hindrance one, but also a safety issue for the children attending the Robert Village Hindu School.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Mr. Speaker, the answer to that is simply yes, once funding is available. We are working with all the regional corporations to assist them wherever we can, and based on the importance of the landslip, I can say yes, the ministry will step in once funding is available. Thank you.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question number 165 to the Minister of Works and Transport.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the landslip referred near Busy Corner is located along the Tabakit Road, is in the vicinity of the 5-kilometer mark. The Tabakit Road starts from the Tabakit RC School and extends for a length of 8.1 kilometers to the Naparima Mayara Road. There's also another landslip in the vicinity of the 6.8-kilometer mark in the vicinity of Teak Trace. 2 projects for landslip repairs at these locations are currently in the planning and development stage with an aim to begin by an unforeseen circumstances to award a contract by the end of fiscal 2023 or early 2024 using competitive tendering subject to the availability of funding. Thank you.
Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Question number 171 to the Minister of National Security on behalf of the member for Oropouche East.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As it pertains to the Brent Thomas ruling, so-called, as Minister of National Security, I was not involved in any form or manner in the approval of officers from the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force for participation in the said operation. In this regard, the question is futile and does not further arise.
Supplemental, member for Naparima.
Minister, state what are the standing operating procedures for the engagement of foreign military assets in the pursuit of our policy and our operational plans?
Minister of National Security.
I would be more than happy to provide a fulsome answer if the member would do the right thing, abide by the standing orders, and file the appropriate question, Mr. Speaker.
Naparima, member.
Is the minister aware that for military aircraft to enter our airspace, approval must come from the cabinet from the Minister of National Security? Because it's a civil aviation authority cannot give approval for military aircraft to enter our airspace.
Minister of National Security.
Why is the member for Naparima being so pedestrian? I did say in answer to the question on notice that I gave no such authority and therefore the question is futile and does not arise. He's now asking me further questions on the same question that I have already answered.
1 second. Bharatiya Sanwan, you give way to Naparima.
Yeah.
Let me know. Okay. Bharatiya Sanwan, member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, can the Honourable Minister indicate whether he was involved in the approval of any officer in relation to this Brent Thomas ruling?
Minister of National Security.
Could the member repeat the question, please?
I will repeat the question again, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Can the Honourable Minister indicate whether or not he was involved in the approval of any of the officers involved in this Brent Thomas ruling?
Again, why is the member for Sawa Barataria joining the member joining the member for Naparima in being that pedestrian? I have just answered. I have given no such approval. Thank you.
Right. The last supplemental question. Who do I give way? Member for Naparima.
Is the minister aware who gave the authorization for the military?
Minister of National Security.
Now he's gone from being merely pedestrian to hobbling along.
No members.
I have answered the question and I maintain the answer that I have given. Thank you very much.
I'll call on Chief Whip, question number 172.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Question number 172 to the Minister of Finance.
Member for San Fernando East.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the decision to recommence service to Caracas was based upon research and analysis of historical performance and potential at route and network level. Also considered with the changing aviation environment, the socio-economic and security posture of Venezuela, and the demand for direct flights to Port of Spain as a final destination and as a transit hub to North America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the rationale used in the decision to resume flights to Caracas, Venezuela is as follows. 1. CAL utilized projections to achieve annualized positive contribution levels at Route Contribution 1 or RC1 to the sum of $456,000 US or 3.1 million TT dollars, and Route Contribution 2 or RC2, which includes RC1, of 46,000 US dollars or 313,000 TT dollars. Levels of positive contribution for the first year of restart operations to Caracas, with growth expected thereafter as frequency and capacity is added. 2. Profit contribution to the route is also expected at the network level, as CAL expects to have persons connecting mainly to Toronto Pearson Airport or YYZ, John D. Kennedy, JFK, Barbados Airport, BGI, Guyana Airport, GEO, and Suriname Airport, PBM. The connections are expected to grow further as CAL increases frequency. 3. There has been a great demand from diplomats, members of the diaspora community, and the traveling public for the re-establishment of CAL flights to and from Caracas, originating in Port of Spain. In addition, requests have been made from the business community in Caracas and wider Venezuela who are interested in doing business in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as using our country as a transit point for onward travel to North American and European destinations. 4. A recent publication by Bloomberg indicated that the Venezuelan economy will grow substantially in 2023 and record a current account surplus. 5. Airlines are now permitted to charge for flights to and from Venezuela in US dollars, thus eliminating currency risk. Finally, 6. Venezuela has established a secure environment at its international airport in Caracas for the traveling public, thus creating a safe zone for passengers, airline staff, and associated businesses to operate. Thank you.
Supplemental point of view, member.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. To the Minister, based on that comprehensive answer, could you state, based on that business plan, how many flights per day or week that CAL will be commencing?
I do not currently have that information, but I can supply it to you in writing.
Proceed, Clip.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers. Personal explanations. Introduction of bills. On the supplemental order paper, number 1, the Anti-Doping in Sports Amendment Bill 2023 in the name of the Minister of Sport and Community Development. Number 2, the Municipal Corporations Extension of Terms of Office and Validation Bill 2023 in the name of the Attorney General.
The Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 64(1)B, I beg to move that the next stage of the Municipal Corporations Extension of Terms of Office and Validation Bill 2023 be taken on Monday, May 29, 2023.
Honourable members, the question is that the next stage of the Municipal Corporations Extension of Terms of Office and Validation Bill 2023 be taken on Monday, May 29, 2023. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister. Public business. Private members' business. Motions.
No, well, according to the records, you completed your session at the last sitting. You completed your debate. So there's a new member can enter the debate at this time. Enter the debate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I recognize the member for San Fernando West.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
One second, member. Honourable members, the debate on the following motion, which was in progress when the House adjourned on Friday, April 28, 2023, will be resumed. Be it resolved that the House express its lack of confidence in the Minister of National Security. I recognize the member for San Fernando West.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Just for the benefit of us all, may I confirm that speaking time is 30 minutes?
30 minutes and your additional 15. Proceed.
Thank you. Different from the last debate we did. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise to address this motion before the House. We're here in Private Members' Day. We're here to debate the motion brought by the member for Barataria Sanwan, and it's a rather bold-faced motion, if I could just say so, because it's premised upon, one, an identification of the roles and responsibilities that a Minister of National Security should do. That's good enough. But there are two bald and bare recitals. The second recital says the Minister of National Security, through his vast and continued incompetence, has mismanaged the organs and Department of National Security. That's the allegation. The third recital, which is another allegation, says the Minister of National Security has unequivocally demonstrated his inability to competently execute his duties. And yet, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we've been here on several days discussing this motion, and absolutely no form of particulars can be attributed to the Minister of National Security, the member for Laventille West. And let me say why I say that so plainly and so confidently, and why I believe that this motion is destined to fail. The first recital of this motion reads, whereas the Minister of National Security is responsible for ensuring public safety by the maintenance of law and order and the effective oversight of the national security infrastructure, insofar as the first recital reads as that, we are dealing with a partial statement of the truth. And let me explain why. The Minister of National Security is a member of the Cabinet with the gazetted responsibilities handed to him under Section 79 of the Constitution by the Parliament, by the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. He sits in a cabinet established by Section 75 of the Constitution, and the responsibilities assigned to the minister are those that are set out in the Gazette defined to him. But the recital here says the Minister of National Security is responsible for ensuring public safety. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is the truth that it is the combination of all of our Westminster-style system of governance, all entities of our Westminster-style system of governance, that actually has the responsibility for ensuring public safety. And let me say why. Number one, our Constitution says that it is the supreme law in Section 2. Number three, the Constitution says that at Section 53 of the Constitution, we must make laws for the peace, order, and good governance of our country. Number four, the Constitution sets up the fact that we shall have a parliament comprised of both a House of Representatives and a Senate, and then it entrusts us collectively with the responsibility to make law, as I've just described. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is in fact the Parliament that creates the operational framework for the Minister of National Security, in large part to be assisted by the laws of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, having managed the passage of laws on behalf of this government for 7 years, as I have your firm attention, I note that it is critical for Trinidad and Tobago to hold on to the fact that we are being asked to run a 100 meters race by the member for Barataria San Juan. We're being told that the Minister of National Security should run as quick as he can, finish the 100-meter race. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, what the member for Barataria San Juan is not saying is that he is responsible for causing the minister to stop at a full 99, not to run the last 1 meter, encumbering the 1 meter to finish the race. It's no good if you've run a brisk 99 in a 100-meter race, because you still lose the race. And let me say why I put that the way I just did. In the race towards public safety, in the race towards the protection of life and the respect of life enshrined in our Constitution in sections 4 and 5, in the preamble of our Constitution, the opposition has insisted on a pattern of conduct where they will not support legislation critically necessary for the Minister of National Security as to his part to operationalize. Let me give you some live examples. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we've had a very aggressive parliamentary agenda for the last 8 years. We insisted upon a suite of legislation. We put it together, we called it an architecture. We ensured that we went behind crime, because money in crime is what feeds bad behavior. If there is money in crime, and if you seek to take the profit out of crime, you're going to invite people to turn away from a life in crime. So our government set about an aggressive pursuit of white-collar crime, blue-collar crime, and other forms of crime. But in running through that agenda, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we then also turn to what we call addressing hard crimes: kidnapping, robbery, domestic violence. We dealt with firearms. We dealt with trespass. And what are the issues gripping Trinidad and Tobago today? Let's take contemporary issues in the newspapers. People wanting to feel safe in their homes. People seeing that people have entered their homes. They're asking what more can be done. But as we well know, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, if you take the entire number of serving policemen and women at about 10,000, and you look at a population of 1.4 million, the fact is that police can engage in partial prevention of crime, like on our roadways, etc., and roadblocks and structures, but also the vast majority of their time is spent in responding to crimes. When we get to responding to crimes, the reason why we've been given a 99-meter race out of 100 and we've been stopped is that the opposition is saying to us, Mr. Minister of National Security, operationalize your police, put them on the beat, let them go and ensure that persons are arrested and that charges are laid, take them before the courts, and then they say, by the way, we will not support bail legislation. And we are dealing right now in a country where automatic firearms are a reality, and in dealing with persons coming into the criminal justice system, appearing before the court, being brought before a judicial officer for consideration for bail, the opposition has insisted by not supporting our bail amendment laws. They have insisted that our bail amendment laws have fallen back to 1994, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And let me explain how serious that is. By the opposition's refusal to support bail amendment laws, the Minister of National Security is now being called upon to be defended today for ensuring public safety. By not supporting the bail amendment laws, we're now seeing a revolving door of persons who are alleged to have committed crime going to the court, getting bail, and coming back out onto the streets to look for money to commit more crime. And the member for Barataria San Juan has the temerity.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I stand on 48.1, Standing Order 48.1. I do not know if the Minister of Local Government is acting for the Attorney General in this particular debate.
Thank you.
Overruled.
Well, yes,
Please,
Mr. Deputy
members,
Speaker.
please.
Desperation looks in many forms often as irrelevance. But anyway, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in looking at the fact that the United National Congress has, by its exercise of voting privilege in this House, all 18 of those honourable members, all 19 of those honourable members, Mr. Deputy Speaker, have refused to support bail legislation, they are coming to condemn the Minister of National Security today to say that the responsibility for ensuring the operation of that system falls squarely to him. Well, no, sir. It falls as a consequence of the refusal of the opposition to support legislation which can stop people from coming out to commit further crimes. And let me remind Trinidad and Tobago, when there was a scourge of kidnapping in this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and people were worried about their state and condition, it was the introduction of the amendments to the Bail Act, it was the denial of bail under the amendments to the kidnapping legislation that saw people initially go to prison without bail for 60 days. And there was a dedicated exercise of arrests, and as a result of that, kidnapping for ransom, which was at runaway epidemic levels in 2007, 2008, around 2009, kidnapping for ransom began to fall, and in fact, statistically, went to nearly zero. Mr. Deputy Speaker, so powerful were the restrictions on bail in the anti-kidnapping that in 2010, Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, the member for Siparia, later to become SC by her own hand, supervised a cabinet that came to the Parliament, and one of the first amendments that they engaged in 2010, 2011 was to amend the Bail Act, Mr. Deputy Speaker, immediately to deny bail for kidnapping for ransom from 60 days to 120 days, to then come to the Parliament to invite the introduction of an anti-gang law, to then come to the Parliament to do a companion amendment to the Bail Act, to deny bail completely if proceedings had begun. So you were initially denied bail for 120 days, but if proceedings began, you were no bail conditioned. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, that prevailed for 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2015. And in the course of that passage of 5 years and 3 months, we saw the bail provisions move from 3 strikes, no bail, to 2 strikes, no bail, to no bail if you have possession of a firearm in the commission of an offense. Understand what we're saying, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The United National Congress, through its Attorney General, came to this Parliament and said, via Mr. Anand Ramlogan, that jail make to ripe fig, and that criminals needed to be put into, persons who were alleged to have committed crimes or listed in the Bail Act, were to be put into prison without the option for bail beyond 120 days if their matter had started. In 2016, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Bail Act was coming to a sunset clause, and the United National Congress entered into its habit of reversing its position. They came to us and they refused to give support for the bail amendments. They refused to give support for the anti-gang amendments, whereas our government in 2010, in Joint Select Committee, and in 2011, participated in fulsome support for the bail amendment and anti-gang legislation to allow no bail provisions. Mr. Deputy Speaker, that's the PNM in opposition supporting no bail. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it gets worse. We came to the Parliament. We struggled. We fought. We had to write. The anti-gang legislation could not be passed. It lapsed. A national uproar happened. We were forced to come back to the Parliament under the UNC, being compelled to bend to public will, to agree that we could debate an anti-gang act within the prescription of 6 months, because after a bill is defeated, you can't bring it back to the Parliament unless there's consent within 6 months. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, what we then did was to amend the Bail Act in a very important way. Number one, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we included white-collar crime offences into the schedule of offences in the Proceeds of Crime Act and other acts. White-collar offences, that is where you get catch thieving in contracts and other matters. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, we very importantly amended Section 6(7) capital A of the Bail Act to say that if you are caught in possession of a firearm on a second occasion, that you shall not be entitled to bail unless you show cause why you should get bail. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I say now, very plainly, that it is my fundamental belief that that bail amendment, Section 6(7) capital A, where we reverse the burden of proof, where we upheld that the court still had discretion to grant bail, where we upheld that it'll be hard for people who are caught with firearms or for scheduled offenses, anti-gang, anti-terrorism, raping children, Mr. Deputy Speaker, raping children, that they should not be granted bail. And today, you have criminologists, you have police, you have persons who are eminent in their understanding of the law saying that there is a revolving door of crime, because even though the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service are capturing people, are arresting people, they go to the court and they are then granted bail in less than stringent circumstances that a reversed burden of proof can. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, what are we met with today? We are met with Barataria Sanwan's motion telling us to condemn the Minister of National Security. The second recital and the third recital just make bare allegations that he's vastly incapable or incompetent, allegations of that nature. And the first recital is they say he, the Minister of National Security, alone, it seems, is responsible for ensuring public safety by the maintenance of law. Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you will not give the Minister of National Security the same force of law that your 4 ministers of national security had, that your government, the UNC government had, if you will not give him the opportunity of asking the entities under his hand to take people to court and have them fight for bail, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you're fast and out of place to come and condemn the Minister of National Security. Because they're saying, listen, don't judge by our standard, don't use the same tools we had, don't have the benefit that we have, you just do it with your 2 hands tied behind your back, your 1 leg sling up, and then you have to jump kick in with 1 leg in a football match. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is just nonsensical for the opposition to come here today, and I reject this motion. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, it gets worse. In recital number 1,
member,
Minister...
Hold on. Member, kindly retract the statement you just made, please. Member, retract, please. Thank you.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, in understanding where we stand today, it gets worse. I just dealt with bail. They will not give us support to make bail difficult within the law, within constitutionality, by reversing the burden. Mr. Deputy Speaker, they will not do that, sir. But it doesn't stop there. They will not support powerful amendments to the Evidence Act. They are on record as rejecting the concept of witness anonymity. And let me explain that. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we came as a government, my colleague, the Minister of National Security, part and parcel of settling that law with me and my colleagues to amend the Evidence Act to say, if you are frightened, if you are afraid to give evidence, if your life is at risk, if your family life is at risk, go to the court and let the court give an anonymous protection order where you can, just like the Yankees do it, just like the Americans do it, you can have a modulation of your voice, you can have your screen use technology. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we came to the Parliament and said, let the court allow people the opportunity to give evidence in a safe environment where the law is preserved. Where, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there will be a special panel of counsel to make sure the rights of the accused are protected. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, do you think that the honourable members would support that? And what is it that people in Trinidad and Tobago are experiencing today? They're being told correctly, if you see something, say something. But people then turn around and say, me say something? To suffer the brunt of victimization, for my family to be at risk? And the opposition will not give its consent or approval for the use of anonymous witness evidence. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it gets worse than that. This is the same opposition that will not give its consent, sir, for the use of polygraph and other lie detection technology inside of the police service. This opposition hears the country saying that there's a degree of uncertainty and unease in relation to a minority of bad apples, if you put it that way, inside of law enforcement. And this Minister of National Security himself, I can say, having chaired the law revision aspects that he brought forward, was the champion of saying, let us use truth detection devices to weed out. Integrity must be number one in testing. This Minister of National Security, having served in the office of the Attorney General, having real on-the-ground experience, championed the cause of saying, make sure you know who guarding the guard. Make sure integrity exists in the ranks and file so that you don't have any allegation of misbehavior in the rank and file of law enforcement. Inland revenue for white-collar crime. Customs and excise for white-collar crime. For importation, for revenue duties, for guns coming in at the border, for drugs going out, for drugs coming in. Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, this opposition said no. So, no reversal of burden for bail, no anti-gang legislation of any strength, no legislation to protect witnesses with anonymous witness evidence, no legislation to have integrity testing in customs and excise, in Board of Inland Revenue, in Trinidad and Tobago Police, Special Reserve Police, Supplemental Police, Estate Police, not one bit of support. And the member for Barataria Sanwan has the temerity to come and say the Minister of National Security is responsible for ensuring public safety. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the reason why I started with the Constitution is to point out that public safety is one of the requirements of the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, sir.
Because we make the laws. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, we cannot pass laws in certain ways without meeting certain formulas. The law, the Constitution says, if you want to interfere with your right to private life, with your freedom of movement, private life is giving fingerprints. Private rights is taking a lie detector test. Freedom of movement, and if you look to Section 5 of the Constitution, bail. If you look to the preamble, you can't interfere by way of law with those things without what we call special majority, or as the Suraj case put it, supermajority, where you have to have a 3/5 of the Parliament in the House agreeing. And if you're going to deeper entrenched provisions that require you have to go 2/3 and 3/4 of the Parliament. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, they just simply said, no, we're not giving you any support. I stood and took criticism day and night as Attorney General for passing law using simple majority law. They cried and they yelled and they screamed constitutional abuse and they said, we're going to take it to court and we're going to strike out all your laws. You lost. You lost in the Privy Council in the case of Suraj, Dominic Suraj, which upheld the case of Surat, which Surat then said, you can pass law on simple majority basis, i.e. without their support, if you have the ability. Piaco is the last case I win. You want to know? $1 billion. $1 billion.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You want to go there, Cuba North? You want to go there? You ask me, was the last case I win?
Address
Mr.
the
Deputy
chair.
Speaker,
Address the
the
chair.
last case that I won is the Piaco corruption case. So don't go there unless you have a cake sale to help pay the money.
Okay, Chief Whip,
So,
thank
Mr.
you.
Deputy
Thank you.
Speaker, as we deal with the fact that we had to pass law by simple majority using proportionate grounds, it is bold-facedness, it is temerity, it is shamelessness to tell the Minister of National Security, run a 100 meters race, but stop at 99 and let me blame you for the one. Because I'm not giving you bail amendment support. I'm not giving you anti-kidnapping support. I'm not giving you anti-gang support. I'm not giving you lie detection support. I'm not giving you whistleblower protection support. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is the United National Congress, you know, where in the courts of this land, decisions can happen, where people stand accused of certain allegations and serious crimes, and they celebrate it, you know. They celebrate it as if the persons accused are national heroes. Mr. Deputy Speaker, number one, recital, the Minister of National Security is responsible for ensuring public safety. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the opposition is part and parcel of public safety, but they're trying a fast one. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let's get down even deeper. We passed, against their wishes, something called the criminal division, Mr. Deputy Speaker. They say it's unconstitutional. It can't happen. We're going to take it to court. Your law will fall. Because we came as a government and piloted the criminal division. You know what the criminal division is, Mr. Deputy Speaker? It was part of the architecture to tackle crime. And we said the criminal division deserves its own structure. It cannot be that you have a magistrate's court with a man calling out the list every morning. For example, Faris Al-Rawi, Rodney Charles, Fitzgerald Hines, by names and by way of examples. No record, no list, no computerization. The registrar does not exist. You had a justice of the peace who was a clerk 1, clerk 2, clerk 3 coming to do legal advice.
Member,
may I have the extension? Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So obliged. Your additional 15.
Thank you, sir. The magistrate's court was running in a longhand book where the transcription of evidence didn't happen, where the magistrate sits with no judicial support. It was this government, this Minister of National Security in a different incarnation, that stood against the UNC to pass that law. And what happened, Mr. Deputy Speaker? Today, we in the magistrates' court have 18 magistrates, 12 senior magistrates, deputy chief magistrate, a chief magistrate. We have registrars of the court. We have electronic hearings. Prisoners come to court on a camera, so justice on time wheels and big trucks moving prisoners, not crushing you on the way to work every morning. You have matters being disposed of with precision and clarity. We took out 104,000 motor vehicle and road traffic offences, and we created demerit points, and we saw a 65-year low in road traffic deaths. But you know what the criminal division gave us? It gave us an addition to the children's division, the children's court, a specialized court to take children out of conflict with the law, which had groundbreaking drug enforcement and drug treatment aspects to it. But you know what else it did? It allowed the civil courts to do better. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, inside of the criminal division, I want to put on record today something that this Minister of National Security did. This Minister of National Security agitated, alongside some of us, but for a different reason, for the creation of a specialist court under Section 24 of the Criminal Division Act. And you know that specialist court that this minister agitated for, amongst the other specialist courts? This minister agitated, and some people might get jumpy now, for an anti-trafficking court. You know what that is, Mr. Deputy Speaker? A specialist fast-track court for people who are trading in flesh, for people who are kidnapping young girls or putting them into circumstances of conflict with the law by way of prostitution, by drug use. This particular Minister of National Security urged and saw the creation of the specialist court pursuant to Section 24 of the Criminal Division Act to make sure that people who are the subject of affidavit evidence, which will tell of criminal conduct in trading in flesh, that they find themselves in a court of law without delay. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is this ministry, it is this opposition that had to scramble and run and backtrack and say, not me and not me, in relation to open allegations that certain persons were involved in flesh trade. Mr. Deputy Speaker, them so. Mr. Deputy Speaker, and Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is this opposition that faced the allegation coming from a previous member of their government that there was truth to certain allegations. Mr. Deputy Speaker, but it is this Minister of National Security that ensured that the gender-based violence unit continues, that the domestic violence unit continues, that the trafficking in persons, anti-trafficking in persons unit prospers, and it is this man, the member for Laventille West, the Honourable Fitzgerald Ethelbert Hines, the Minister of National Security, that went and saw the fixation, in fact, of a specialist court to deal with trafficking in human beings. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I wonder if this opposition is afraid. Because, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as recent events have demonstrated, you could run for 15 years, you could run for 19 years, you could run for 25 years in white-collar crime. The wheels of justice may turn slowly, but they definitely turn. What time is full time, sir?
11 minutes.
Mr. Deputy
2:36.
Speaker, let me further grind that point solidly into the cement. You see, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with this Minister of National Security, having had the experience of coming from private practice, law enforcement in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, being a respectful man, I can testify, sir, having sat on the Defense Council with this gentleman, that the Minister, the Honourable Minister of National Security, is one of the hardest working people I've come across. And I say that in all honesty from my heart as a witness to his work. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is the opposition that wants to see this minister trip. A few moments ago, there was salivation in the questions being asked. Minister, did you go and interfere with a plane to go and give approval for somebody to get arrested? The minister stood 2-3 times and said, I did not. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is the same UNC that now comes to say this minister responsible for going to do exactly what they tell him he shouldn't do. The Minister of National Security has the responsibility to create structures that work in tandem with the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. For instance, I have the responsibility, if Naparima's voice can just chill itself, I have the responsibility, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to ensure that the Municipal Corporations Act sections 48 to 52 apply. Naparima, through you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, has the disadvantage of having...
One second. Again, hold on, members. Again, the decorum of the House is that we listen to the member in silence. Again, you can speak, but again in very hushed tones, right? And at times, it's elevated to a high decibel, all right? So again, member, we have a format of how things is done in this House. So again, proceed.
Let me repeat what I was saying. Naparima has the disadvantage of being the originator of a lot of these questions that don't make sense. Because it is Naparima who is prosecuting a false allegation by way of question times, answered 3 times today by way of example, where they're asking the Minister of National Security to take responsibility for certain things, and then at the same time telling him, you can't engage in certain things, but take responsibility for public structures, and don't mind, we're not supporting you with the law to get there. Mr. Deputy Speaker, on principle, the motion has to fail. But I was on the point of grinding this point into the cement. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Minister of National Security is now managing urgent attention in trafficking in human beings, significant amendments to come in relation to that legislation, ensuring the creation of a specialist court to deal with trafficking in persons charges, pursuing white-collar crime. And I want to add, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it was the opposition that was kicking and screaming in the civil asset forfeiture unexplained wealth legislation. Without going into any case, what I can say is that that law has gone to work. and that there are matters before the court where people have to explain their wealth as we speak, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
That's right.
And when those cases mushroom and become precedent, they will be as powerful as the 19 years it took to deliver a victory in the Piarco international scandal. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in the Explain Your Wealth legislation, you're going to find the proceeds of crime. Those proceeds of crime are going to have people explain how you're earning $6,000 a month and have $70 million in assets. How? Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is the UNC that went on a tirade in this country about witnesses, about the state ensuring that whistleblowing protection legislation came here. Mr. Deputy Speaker, that's one of the most powerful pieces of law that we can have. I'll give you an example to a case that has now concluded outside of Trinidad and Tobago. The Piarco International case. It was 5 confessions of guilt given in 2005 when the case started. 6 and 7, 2006, 2007, 5 people went on affidavit and then in plea agreements to say, I thief money from Trinidad and Tobago. And they went to jail. 5 Americans went to jail and forfeited assets. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the United States government took millions of US dollars and gave it to Anand Ramlogan as Attorney General and to the Controller of Accounts in the period 2010 to 2015.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Order 48.1. What is the relevance of this? 48.1, please.
Time.
Overruled.
Thanks. Yes, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And by way of returning monies to Trinidad and Tobago, stolen monies, Mr. Deputy Speaker, when I was in the office of the Attorney General, there was this rather unusual painting in the office. I looked at it on the wall and said, what on earth is this? They say, boss, you don't know what that is? I said, no. They say, well, that is a stolen piece of art which was returned to Attorney General Anand Ramlogan as reparations, as return of monies to Trinidad and Tobago in the Piarco case. It's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars by a famous artist. It was hanging up in the Attorney General's office, Anand Ramlogan. This is the same UNC, under the same Prime Minister, Kamla Prasad-Visesa, member for Siparia, that came to this Parliament and passed Section 34, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And you know what was shocking? In all the allegations that it was political persecution, if it was political persecution, the Piarco case, why you accept the money from the US government?
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell the population that there were monies being returned to Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker?
Me. Yes, sir. Yes. I rise on 48.2. As far as I am aware, the matter has been appealed in the United States court, and therefore you cannot raise substantive aspects of the case in this house.
No, one second. Again, so remember, again, tying your point quickly and don't go into to details of the matter.
Yes, sir. I'm guided by...
Just have about three more minutes.
I'm guided by the standing orders which prescribe that I should not make statements so as to influence certain things. I'm talking about a piece of art in the Attorney General's office, hanging up in the office that I sat down in for 7 years, which represented thief money that was returned to Trinidad and Tobago and suppressed by the UNC.
Silence.
Because, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in bringing the motion against the minister today, they're telling him that he is responsible and he should be condemned for public safety when they will not give the assistance or tell the truth. And, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that and that alone means the motion is destined to fail. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the population is tired. It is sometimes difficult to have to repeat things from the past, but Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to say why I've just mentioned a number of the things that I have mentioned as I wrap up. It's because the leader of the opposition, Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar, was in the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago in the years 1995 to 2000. It is the same Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, the leader of the opposition, the member for Superior, that was the Prime Minister in 2010 to 2015. And in both periods, that member ought to have been capable of testifying of the facts that I have just spoken to, but instead has refused to say it is political persecution and just pretend it didn't happen and let we run the country and give you a chance. And don't mind, we will not give you the laws, the same laws we had, the UNC had, to fight crime. We're not going to give you the laws. We're not going to give you the resources. And instead they come to make condemnation of the Honorable Minister for National Security. This government wants to do better all the time. This government must ensure that we continue to try to serve the people. This government wanted to make possession of any weapon, any automatic weapon, non-bailable. And if any of them have the guts to stand up and support that law, then they will not be leaving a Rasta man alone to bear a cross by himself, in figurative, in literary, or in actual senses, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I reject this motion and I condemn the movers' rationale behind it. Thank you.
I recognize the member for St. Augustine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, listening to the last speaker, the country could be misled. This is not a motion about the former Attorney General Anand Ram Logan, whose shoes the member for San Fernando West cannot even step in, much less fill. This is not a motion about the opposition. The member for San Fernando West has failed to defend the member for Laventille West as the Minister of National Security. The member has failed to give any just reason for not just this Parliament, but for the people of Trinidad and Tobago to have any confidence in the member for Laventille West as the Minister of National Security. He is an abject failure. And you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member for San Fernando West should be the last person to talk about losing cases. I want to kindly remind the member that he is no longer Attorney General for a reason. Well said. He was fired for a reason, and that reason is abject failure.
Standing order. Standing order.
Members. Again, members, please. Thank you. Member.
Mr.
Okay, members.
Mr. Deputy Speaker,
okay, members.
Minister National.
Okay, members. Oh, no. Fine, I'm in control. Again, overruled. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I will not be railroaded by the member.
Member, I have ruled.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member for San Fernando West has an undeniable track record of losing cases on behalf of people. And you know, I hear so many dumb blonde / lawyer jokes about this member on the outside. And it is which standing order?
Okay.
Which standing order?
Okay, member, he has risen.
Which standing order?
Well, you have to get, proceed.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I respectfully rise on Standing Order 48.1, Standing Order 48.4, Standing 48.6, because it is not a substantive motion on me, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Again. Again. Overruled, but member, again, tying your point quickly so that we could get on to the business of the bill with regards to national security.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I am surprised that the member for San Fernando West
Go ahead, I have ruled.
is indicating that this is not a motion about San Fernando West, because from his contribution, it was all about him. He did not spend a minute defending his colleague, who this motion is about.
I thought he was reappointed.
But you know, it would be laughable.
No, again, Chief Whip, you just stood and you're doing the same thing you just spoke about, Chief Whip. Chief Whip. So please, let's hear St. Augustine.
We could laugh about the incompetence of the former Attorney General losing so many cases, but it has cost this country millions and billions of dollars. And Mr. Speaker, for the record, not one of us here in the opposition has been making deals with state witnesses.
Oh, Lord.
And I want also for the record, because the former Attorney General...
Stand down, sit down.
Okay,
What
member,
standing
I am on my left.
all right, hold
What
on.
standing order?
Okay, St. Augustine. Standing order, let's hear it.
Standing order 48-1. The member is treating with the member for San Fernando West. The motion here is not about him or that.
Again, member, as I told you, tie it in quickly with the national security and let's proceed.
Thank you. I am responding to the points raised by the member for San Fernando West. I want to correct the record. The Attorney General, the former Attorney General, spoke about several pieces of crime-fighting legislation that the opposition did not support. And this is not the first time that I'm hearing this incorrect information in this parliament. And it is being said on platforms and other places as if it is the truth, and it is not. I want to call, Mr. Speaker, for the record in this House, the list of some of the crime-fighting bills that the opposition supported. The Bail Bill 2017. Miscellaneous Provisions 2017. That was mutual assistance in criminal matters. The Supreme Court of Adjudicature and Children's 2018. Payments into Court Bill 2018. All of them. And in that bill, the opposition made extensive comments. The Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings 2019.
Members, again, members, no problem with the desk stumping, but you see the little comments, let's keep it in hushed tones. Proceed.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the list goes on. The Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings 2018. The Firearms Amendment Bill 2019. And that bill, the opposition did not need to support because it required a simple majority. But the opposition supported that bill. I hope that the Minister of National Security in his response could tell us how many arrests and convictions were made under these. The former Attorney General specifically spoke about the Civil Asset Recovery and Management Bill 2019, and he said that the opposition did not support. That is not true. That is not true. The opposition support was not needed because that bill needed a simple majority, and the opposition supported that bill. And in fact, it was the leader of opposition, the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa, who brought over 60 amendments to fix that bill. There were also several pieces of legislation that required a special majority that were passed with the support of the opposition. And I will call some of them for the record. the Tax Information Exchange Agreements, FATCA 2016. That was passed in the House of Representatives in February 2017 and in the Senate with the opposition support. I noticed that both the member for Laventille West and San Fernando West have vacated their seats. And they should be ashamed. They should be ashamed. Beat them. There was also the Insurance Act 2016, which was passed with the support of the opposition in 2018, and in both houses. No. There was. Mr. Deputy Speaker, there was the Anti-Terrorism Amendment Act 2018, passed by both the House of Representatives and the Senate. The Licensing Committee Validation Act 2018, passed by both the opposition and the government. That is not all, There are more. And this former Attorney General continued to put forward untruths. The Bail Amendment Bill in 2019. That bill was passed, Mr. Chairman, in the House of Representatives. 32 votes for, 0 votes against, and 0 abstentions. So who voted against and who abstained? Mr. Deputy Speaker, what standing order?
Member.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I rise on standing order 48.6. What the member has said is just simply untrue. Untrue.
All right. So again, hold on. Okay. All right. So, member for St. Augustine, right? I think you have exhausted your list in terms of identifying the amount of support. The previous debater would have mentioned a few. You have even gone on before. So I'd like you to tie it in quickly, right? If I have to rise again, I will have to probably tell you to move on accordingly.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have not exhausted the list. There are more, but I will stop there for now.
Remember,
I will stop there for
okay, 1 second. I understand you clearly, all right, in terms of the amount that you have gone on to even more. Yes. And I'm saying, kindly proceed accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I was saying that the list, there are more pieces of legislation on the list that the UNC opposition supported. However, I mentioned these for the record for a purpose. The member for San Fernando West was Attorney General at the time and either knows or ought to know the truth. And I call on him to apologize for the incorrect information. I'm not accusing him of lying. For the incorrect information. And, Mr. Chairman,
I rise on standing order 48.6. The improper motive of imputing that I am telling an untruth is just not true, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so again, member, that is also debatable in terms of going forward. But I'd like you to move on to another point, please. Right? Move on.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Deputy Speaker, my source for this information is the Hansard.
Correct.
My source for this information is
standing order.
Just for the record.
I rise.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise on standing order 48.8. If this were a substantive motion on me, the member would have all the latitude possible. But it is not one on me, and therefore I cannot respond. So it is an abuse.
Is the member raising a standing order or responding?
Member, I will have to uphold the particular standing order. I would like you to move on. The debate and the motion is not on the particular member, and I think you have exhausted in terms of the response. So kindly move on, please.
So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I really think at any point in any debate or any committee or any proceedings of Parliament, it is customary that if a member puts incorrect information on record, they either apologize or face the disciplinary, the privileges committee.
Okay, fine. Point taken. Member for St. Augustine. And again, member for Bartaria San Juan, there is a procedure as you all well know how to go about
Yes.
with regards to that. So kindly move on to your another point.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise on Standing Order 48.6. Member for San Fernando West clearly said that we are speaking untruths on this side. He should withdraw
No.
that. Withdraw it.
Proceed.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, responding to the last speaker is part of my contribution. But this debate was never about the former Attorney General. It was never about the opposition. It is about the failure of the member for Laventille West as the Minister of National Security. I want to, for the record, out of the Gazette, to share with you the assignment of responsibility for the Ministry of National Security. And so, with a checklist, we can tell whether the member has been successful or he has failed in the responsibilities. Minister of National Security, Departments of Government, Immigration. Fail completely.
Tell me, that's for the records, it's date, that gazette is dated?
April 27th, 2021. Intelligence. That completely escapes him. Internal security. Management of illegal immigrants and deportees. Failed. National emergency and disaster management. Failed. And I want to talk a little bit more about that with flooding in St. Augustine. Parole and prisoner management. Failed. Probation services. Failed. Security of government officials and premises. Supplemental police. Victims of crime. Failed. Witness protection and care and support. Failed. There are several other areas of responsibility for the Minister of National Security, and I'm referring to the Trinidad and Tobago Gazette, but I don't want to spend all my time reading what the Minister of National Security apparently has not read, because the responsibilities listed there clearly are not attended to by the Minister of National Security. What we have seen, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in Trinidad and Tobago is a complete breakdown in law and order. What we have seen under this Minister of National Security is fear in citizens. We are seeing increased school violence. We are seeing girls growing up in abusive homes and communities, and the state failing to protect our girls. Under this Minister of National Security, Trinidad and Tobago.
1 second, 1 second. One person at a time. No, but still, hold on.
Order 48.1, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This is not the Office of the Prime Minister, Gender Affairs.
Okay, thank you. Okay, again, member, tie in your point. Proceed.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I find the member for San Fernando
member, I have ruled.
using the standing orders now.
No. Member for St. Augustine, I have ruled. Proceed.
Thank you for your ruling, Mr.
Deputy Speaker, I want to lodge on the record Order 55.1B against member for San Fernando West.
Okay, member, thank you.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, under this Minister of National Security, Trinidad and Tobago has been ranked the 6th most criminal country in the world. And that is not the UNC statistics. That is the Guardian media report from the world of
I stand on 48.1, please. This information is completely false, and I'd like to ask the source of the information.
Thank you, member. Okay,
it's false.
Member, proceed.
I will repeat for the record. For the member for San Fernando East. Trinidad and Tobago has been ranked the 6th most criminal country in the world under this Minister Fitzgerald Hines. according to the Trinidad Guardian report from the World of Statistics.
All right, what date is that?
I will provide the date, 2023. It's 2023, Mr. According to the report, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Trinidad and Tobago has the 6th highest crime rate in the world.
Deputy Speaker, I stand on 48.1. This source is completely irrelevant and false, and
you just answer the source.
It's irrelevant. It should not be used. It is irrelevant.
It's all relevant.
That source has been discredited over and over.
Okay, fine. Again, there is a certain decorum that goes with this particular house. Okay? Member rise on a standing order. The member we speak in will have his or her seat. Right? And then when, hold on, member for Sinagasin, and then when the speaker rule, there is no need for no other comment. Please. All right? So I have ruled. Proceed. Tie it in quickly to what you want to bring forward.
On the 15th of April 2023, the Trinidad Guardian had a report that Trinidad and Tobago was the 6th highest crime rate in the world. That the Trinidad and Tobago government faces several challenges in its effect to reduce crime, such as bureaucratic resistance to change, the negative influence of gangs, drugs, economic recession, and an overburdened legal system. There is a great demand for illegal weapons as well, which drug trafficking and gang-related activities fuel. All of these point to a failure of the Ministry of National Security. And when the Guardian contacted the Minister of National Security for a comment on these statistics and this report, he was so kind to apologize. Minister Fitzgerald Hines apologized and said he was unable to speak on the listing. He can't even talk about it because he is...
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want you to guide San Fernando East as it relates to Standing Order 47. He cannot continue to abuse the standing orders.
Okay, thank you. Members, again, the member will speak in silence. The member, Brother San Juan and member for San Fernando is you all.
May I continue?
Again. Proceed, member.
Madam, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the truth hurts, you know. The truth hurts, and that is the reason for so many irrelevant objections from those on the other side. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, when we in the opposition stand and we talk about the state of crime in Trinidad and Tobago, we are not doing this to show the world a bad side of Trinidad and Tobago. The world already sees several countries, including the United States, have issued bulletins warning their citizens about what happens in Trinidad and Tobago where crime is concerned, not because the UNC said so. The bulletins did not come from the Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessar or Rodney Charles. It came from the United States, from the United Kingdom, based on their national security intelligence on the state of crime in Trinidad and Tobago. In Trinidad and Tobago, missing persons present another area of failure by the Minister of National Security. In December of 2022, there was an article in the Newsday that indicated that there were 552 missing persons in 2020 alone. 30 were reported.
Once you are quoting an article close on, I would like to get the date for the record of the Hansard, just in case, please. Other than that, you take total ownership for the particular thing.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I started the line by saying the Trinidad and Tobago Newsday of the 31st of December 2022 said. So the source is Trinidad and Tobago Newsday, December 31st, 2022. there were 552 missing persons in 2020, 30 dead, 446 found, and 56 vanished without a trace. Has the Minister of National Security provided any kind of security, any kind of comfort to those families that their loved ones would be found? He has failed. Has the Minister of National Security put measures in place to prevent women and girls from going missing? He has failed. And when, not the opposition alone, when civil society speaks out, you know what he does? He attacks them rather than attacking the criminals. Again, you try to intimidate people who speak out because they speak against your failure and your abject failure as Minister of National Security. Murders in Trinidad and Tobago, in that same article, the source is Newsday, December 31st, 2022. In that same article, they spoke about the murder toll of 2022 exceeding 600. You tell me, a man who is serving and unable to reduce the murder rate does not have the decency to step down? The youngest murder victim in 2022 was a 1-year-old baby, Nova Berriton, who was shot dead along with his mother, 30-year-old Sashel Elliott. And the oldest murder victim, Mr. Deputy Speaker, was an 88-year-old woman, Evelyn Piper, who was found dead in her home in Gasparillo. And no sign of a reduction in murder. An abject failure by the Minister of National Security. I personally have participated in many sessions with victims of abuse who come to share their story with the rest of Trinidad and Tobago. Shade Emmanuel, Ria Sukdeo, Ashanti Riley, Andrea Barrett, Khadija Kojo, and dozens of other women who would still be here with us today had the government shown any compassion or had any competence at all. Some of these families still to this date have no closure. It has torn families apart. They live in depression, unable to recover from that sense of loss, from losing their daughters and their sisters. And from time to time, we see on the media stories of families explaining what the last day was like, what the uncertainty for so many years is. And still, the Minister of National Security continues to operate like all is well. And it is not. He is an absolute failure. In 2022, Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, in his New Year's Day's message, indicated that the government was committed to making 2023 a year of public review, consequent overhaul, and redoubling of its effort to fight crime on all fronts. This, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is an acknowledgement by the Honorable Prime Minister that crime is out of hand. And I have a recommendation for the Honorable Prime Minister, where you should start fighting crime. And the first thing you should do is to fire the incompetent Minister of National Security. Because he has proven over the time that he has been there to not only be unable to reduce the murders, but we have seen an increase in murder, serious crime, violence, and criminal activity under his watch. He has been almost bold-faced with it. I remember we had asked a question in Parliament here concerning the CCTV cameras some time ago. And on the 5th of February, the then Minister of National Security, which was Minister Stuart Young, stated that non-functional CCTV cameras were being removed across Trinidad and Tobago, while those that were usable were being repaired to ensure that they were operational as a part of crime-fighting measures. Okay, we're waiting for action. We're waiting for CCTV cameras that would help in finding and identifying criminals. And 2 years later, we see that nothing has been done. Nothing. The opposition did not stop there. The Minister of National Security present, Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, confirmed to this Parliament when we in the opposition asked that a total of 1,766 CCTV cameras were installed throughout the country. But guess what? Just under 700 were non-functional. Non-functional, you know. And in the last year, we have been asking him, how many of these CCTV cameras have you repaired? And we continue to raise the matter because it is the role of the opposition to keep the government in check. And it appears that every time this Minister of National Security has to answer follow-up questions about CCTV cameras, after women go missing, after women are kidnapped, after they are raped and their bodies found, this minister seems to be upset that the opposition is asking questions for the safety and security of our citizens.
Honourable Member, your initial speaking time has elapsed. You have an additional 15 minutes. Care to avail yourself?
Yes.
So
Thank
proceed.
you very much. With regards to the safety of women and girls, the UNC opposition have been, as well as civil society, have been making recommendations to have CCTV cameras functional. It's not enough to just have CCTV cameras, they must be functional. We must have adequate street lighting. I trust that the member for Lopino Bonner West, who is the Minister of Public Utilities, will take note of this plea, which I am making again, because I have spoken about it before, where street lighting and public safety is concerned. An admission is the first step, but it is not enough to just admit that you do not have what it takes to solve the problem. Public transport, another area that the Minister of National Security should be collaborating to ensure the safety of our women. I remember this government told us there would be buses with Wi-Fi, you know. We are in 2023, we don't even have buses in some of these areas, much less Wi-Fi. We have been asking and recommending police posts in certain hotspot areas, again, failure by the Minister of National Security. We need the presence of police officers, which will be a deterrent to offenders. We have not seen that. We need continuous support for rapid response, community engagement with our police officers. I want to, for the record, read the number of murders that are taking place in this country. And the source is the TTPS, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the TTPS. 2014, under this PNM government, 2016, 462 murders. 2017, 495 murders, 53 were women. 2018, 517 murders, 47 were women. 2019, 536 murders, 64 were women. 2020, 392 murders, 54 were women. 2021, 448 murders, 33 were women. 2022, a record 598 murders, 57 were women. And this Minister of National Security continues to sit there with his incompetence and be just in our faces as though all is well. All is not well. In the years we have had from 2011 to 2022, we have lost and continue to grieve thousands. In the years 2016 to 2022, we have continued to lose and we continue to grieve for so many murder victims. The current Minister of National Security promised a miracle crime plan. He said that he had been given a violent crime reduction plan prepared by the TTPS. We have not seen the results yet. He said he had 15 objectives for successful implementation. We have not seen the results yet. He said he would be dismantling criminal gangs, seizing illegal firearms. We have not seen the results yet. He said that the plan aims to achieve 11 targets, a 20% reduction of homicide, and a 30% reduction, a 30% detection rate. Just last week, the Commissioner of Police came out and told us there is a 12% conviction rate for murders. So clearly the Minister of National Security is not meeting his targets. Again, he's an abject failure. The Minister said that there were 2,500 cutting-edge cameras were being installed all over Trinidad and Tobago. We're still waiting. We're still waiting. This is not joke time. This is serious business. National security is serious business. So all this time, Minister Fitzgerald Hines is telling us that he has the recipe, but he has refused to use it. How could he possibly predict a 20% homicide rate? To date, the rate has not been reduced. It has, in fact, skyrocketed under his watch. A member for, sorry. Mr. Deputy Chairman, Mr. Deputy Speaker, one of the responsibilities of the Ministry of National Security is the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management. It is described as a coordinating and managing body that places equal emphasis on all the phases of disaster management cycle: prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. Under Minister Fitzgerald Hines, the level of unpreparedness of the disaster of preparedness is totally astounding. The minister is an absolute disaster. Mr. Speaker, I represent the constituency of St. Augustine. Shelters were advertised by the ODPM, full-page ads that cost a lot of money, taxpayers' dollars, and I'll tell you, I want to use the two in St. Augustine constituency as first-hand information. St. Augustine South Community Center is on that list. Bamboo Community Center is on that list. You know we had some devastating floods in December of 2022. And areas in St. Augustine, such as Bamboo 2, Valsayn South, Spring Village, and St. Augustine South, were terribly affected. The response from the ODPM was poor. We had those shelters advertised, and the ODPM never even visited them. The regional corporation sent 12 cots and blankets 2 years before, and we were supposed to have a visit by the ODPM to certify these shelters. Never happened. We never had an appointment of shelter managers, no supplies, no plan. But you're taking our taxpayers' dollars to advertise shelters that are not functional, that is not operational, that is not equipped, and you are just fooling people. You are using our money for PR rather than disaster preparedness. You yourself are a disaster.
No, member, I would just like you to retract your last statement.
Thank you very much.
No.
Do retract. No. I give my chance, I retract.
No, listen, no. Member, listen. Kindly retract your last statement. That's all I ask you to do.
I retract the last statement. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Trinidad and Tobago is on a Tier 2 watch list from the United States for human trafficking. To date, not a single conviction has been taking place or registered under the present Minister of National Security for human trafficking. They're up and down the place talking about human trafficking. It was the government led by the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar that brought the Human Trafficking Act into being. And we're up and down using human trafficking as if it is a campaigning point. Put your money where your mouth is and arrest people who are guilty. The statistics don't lie, you know. The statistics don't lie. And I listened to several of the, in particular, the minister.
Member, again, the statistics don't, I think you could use a better word. Yeah.
The statistics do not lead us wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Statistics and facts and numbers are the truth. What you hear on a platform may not necessarily be the truth. And last night I heard some things on a platform that I know were not the truth. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, what I heard is a tone of almost apology from certain members. And because it is very clear now that the population is so dissatisfied with this government and this Minister of National Security dealing with crime and safety in Trinidad and Tobago, the government has to face the truth now. And you know what I'm hearing coming out from the other side? I am hearing, well, things hard, it's tough. The opposition don't support we, where. And you know, when you speak to the victims of crime, this doesn't resonate with them. Nobody wants to hear about a painting in somebody's office. They want results. They want the criminals off the street. Get the guns off the street. Get justice for people. And when in this country, a continued sense of injustice continues because it seems that there's one rule for one and another rule for another. One person's children could have guns, another person's children will be arrested. That creates a sense of injustice in this country, on top of the situation with the social issues such as people don't have food, people cannot go to school, cannot send their children to school, and they are facing the frustration of the risk of stepping out their house and getting gunned down. School children have been gunned down. A little boy was gunned down in Kunupia on a playground. Children in school have to be ducking and hiding under the desk because gunmen outside under the Minister of National Security. He is a failure. Not only did he not address the issue, you know, he blamed the children and blamed the teacher for overreacting. I want to know if a gunman outside your house, you won't duck and cover too. But then again, some people have security outside their house, some people don't. And that sense of injustice continues to make our citizens feel that you wouldn't know unless you sit and speak to some people. The anger they feel. And that is why our young people are falling through the cracks, because the soft approach and the hard approach to crime fighting, to reach our young people, to provide opportunities, to take them out of the hands of the criminals. When the government refuses to provide jobs and they see an income from the criminals, that is what this Minister of National Security is feeling. And let me tell you, my father was a Rasta man. And using Rastafarian and a Rastafarian hairstyle to try to appear to be down to earth and appear to be people-centric is so disturbing.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise on Standing Order 48.1, please. The Minister of National Security's appearance has nothing to do with this debate. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
No, San Fernando West said it.
San Fernando West said it. Yes.
Can I now? Can I? Again, member, please, let's don't bring identity itself into it. Let's talk about the office as against the thing. I know you made reference to, the thing, but again, let's keep the identity directly with it. So I'll hear you, and then I'll decide, if we will go further or not.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I believe you, Mr. Injury time, eh? But Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am responding to a point made by the member for San Fernando West in his contribution, which I personally found disturbing because it was in reference to the Rastafarian identity of the Minister of National Security, as if that was relevant. And I personally find it offensive because my father is a Rastafarian. I know my father with long dreads to his knees. And
but he had integrity.
Your point has been made.
He had integrity.
I have ruled. Yes, so let's move on.
And my father was a man of integrity.
Yeah. Well, please.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am an elected member of Parliament. I serve the constituency of St. Augustine.
Member, you have 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
But before being a member of parliament, I am a patriot of Trinidad and Tobago. It gives me no pride, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to have to come to this parliament and talk about Fitzgerald, the Honourable Fitzgerald Hines, his incompetence as a Minister of National Security. We have had some bad ones in the past, but I really feel the Honourable Member for Laventille West is by far the worst Minister of National Security. And it is not only his failure based on the rising number of murders, the increasing violent crime, the guns and so on in the country. There is also a level of arrogance in his approach. And we see often what I consider bullying, an attempt at bullying the media, his opponents, or anybody who wants to challenge.
Standing order 48.6, please. What are you? Mr. Deputy Speaker, Standing Order 48.6, please.
Yeah, again, you can say that differently, right? Are you capable enough? Yeah, say it differently.
When we speak in Parliament, the children of this nation are watching. And when we get an air of arrogance from our ministers, when we see an attempt to vilify those who put forward opposing views, when we see people appearing to bully other people, it sends a signal in this country to our children, and it has an impact on how acceptable...
Order 48.6 again, please.
Again, remember, we are bordering on a couple seconds, right? Hold, members, please. I need no assistance. I need no assistance. Right? You're right. Remember, again, you're a couple seconds away from your thing. So again, I told you to say it over, and you know what I mean. So let's retract that last end and let's close off, please.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am making a general statement about the behavior of our leaders in society and the poor example being set by those on the government bench. And in particular by the member for Laventille West, who has continuously...
Member, your speaking time has elapsed. I recognize the member for Lopino, Bonaire West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am very pleased to enter this debate as the Member of Parliament for Lupino, Bonaire West. Any motion that is filed against any member of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, a member of the cabinet, expressing lack of confidence, is a motion and a matter to be treated with a degree of seriousness. This particular motion is filed against the Minister of National Security, filed by the Member of Parliament for Barataria and Samoa. And I sat and I listened to every speaker on the opposition side prosecuting their case against the Minister of National Security. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is almost 3 years in this 12th Parliament that I am a Member of Parliament and privileged to serve as a PNM Member of Parliament. And during those 3 years, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have participated in numerous contributions on this side of the House, treating with the issue of crime and violence. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is a very serious issue that behoves all members of Parliament. It is our collective responsibility and duty to ensure that we participate in discussions and pass laws for the good order and governance of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It is not only the responsibility of the Minister of National Security, as my good friend from San Fernando West would have eloquently explained during his contribution, it is our collective responsibility to ensure that the laws that we pass in this Parliament, they are all passed for the good order and the peace of every single citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. The issue of crime and violence, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is one that besieged this country for years. It is not a matter that just came about just yesterday or last year or 5 years ago. As a matter of fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker, between the period 2010 and 2015, we would have seen an avalanche of ministers of national security. It was like a revolving door in that ministry. And we also saw where a minister of national security in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago was named in all kinds of documents, in FIFA, being involved in all kinds of crimes, transnational crimes. A very, very serious issue, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And
Again, members, standing order 53 is clear. Listen in silence. And if we want to take it to the total extent, that will be determined by the chair. So again, I recognize the member for Lopino Bonner West. Continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we in Trinidad and Tobago, together with all of our neighbors and our brothers and sisters in the entire Caribbean, we are faced with an avalanche of crime and violence, with guns entering into our shores, guns being used to murder our young boys and our young girls. And it is our duty and our responsibility as legislators and lawmakers to do what we must to protect our entire Caribbean and our entire republic. That is our duty. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is politics. And perhaps one may argue that it is fair game to use the issue of crime and violence to attack a sitting government, hoping that it brings political reward for the opposition. It's not only in Trinidad and Tobago. We would have seen it all over the entire Caribbean, where opposition parties, as opposed to working collaboratively with their sitting counterparts in the government, they use the issue of crime and violence, hoping that it brings political reward for them. And I, as a member of Parliament here, almost 3 years, I would have seen it, I would have witnessed it, I would have lived it. I heard the member for St. Augustine read out a whole list of bills. But I can tell you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are not living in Mars, we're living right here. And it is our experience that every single bill that was brought in this House, we had to resist, and we have to resist, and we have to resist. And this current AG, as well as the previous AG, had to amend bills so that we can use our majority to pass. Because what the opposition was doing, Mr. Deputy Speaker, please protect me from San Juan, Barataria, San Juan.
Again, members. Again, for the records, in your absence and you no return, standing order 53 will be invoked. Proceed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But one may argue it as well is a fair game to attack the government and hope that we fail on crime, because they believe, the opposition in Trinidad and Tobago believe, that if this government fails on the issue of crime, it will open the doors for them to inherit office and to continue to plunder and mismanage the people of Trinidad and Tobago and their affairs. That is what they hope for.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise on Standing Order 48-6.
Proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. That's what they hope for. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me emphasize to all members of Parliament, especially members of the UNC, if you believe that changing a Minister of National Security will bring about the type of country that we desire, and I hope that that is their desire, then what you are selling this country is cat and bag. You are not being forthright, and you are not being honest with the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because the issue of crime is a multifaceted one. It's a multifaceted issue. And we as legislators have our role to play. The Minister of National Security has his role to play. The judiciary has their role to play. The police have their role to play. Community development and community groups, they all have their role to play. Religious groups all have their role to play, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And therefore, to come in this Parliament and file a motion beating it almost every single week and every single month that the problem in Trinidad and Tobago with respect to crime and violence is the Honourable Member for Laventille West and the Member of Parliament for Laventille West and the Minister of National Security, you are not being forthright with the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You are not being forthright. The Minister has his role to play, and we as a government, we have our role to play to support him and all agencies that fall under his command and ensure that all of the legislative frameworks are in place so that the other arms of the state, with their roles and their responsibilities, will do what they must to protect the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The criminals, Mr. Deputy Speaker, are following exactly what is taking place in this Parliament. And they know full well that the government stands on its own with respect to the defense of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because we do not have an opposition that is willing to cooperate with the government in its effort to protect the people of Trinidad and Tobago. They understand it. They know it. They understand it very, very well. And it is very unfortunate when we are in a crisis, all law-abiding citizens, both PNM, UNC, and all other political affiliation, we are in this fight together to protect our country. There is a time and there is a place for politics. So let me come to this motion. The Honourable Member for Barataria San Juan, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is an attorney. And he knows and he appreciates that if you file a motion against a member of the cabinet, you cannot just come here and read newspaper clippings and repeat what people are saying in the media to prosecute your case. It is not enough. It is not enough. I would have gone through the entire contribution of the Honourable Member for Barataria San Juan, looking and searching for the evidence that he would have presented in this House to prosecute the Minister of National Security. And if he was in a criminal court, that matter and this motion would have failed at the minute he sat down on a no-case submission. On a no-case submission. No evidence, no prima facie evidence, nothing whatsoever, no substance whatsoever. All designed, Mr. Deputy Speaker, all designed. And when you listen to his contribution, I mean, at certain point in time, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I cringed. I cringed at some of these statements that the Honourable Member and other members would have stood here pointing to issues of gun and bullets flying through classrooms and all these things, painting the worst circumstances about the people of Trinidad and Tobago, not recognizing that what you are saying, not only the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago are listening, but the world is listening. And we have to be very careful that we have to be responsible as legislators. I'm not telling you to be unfactual. I'm not telling you to misrepresent anything, but we ought to be very careful in the way in which we describe our country, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And everything that the member would have said in the piloting of this motion, I've read through the entire contribution, and the honourable member would have fallen woefully short in prosecuting his matter against the Honourable Minister of National Security. Very, very unfortunate. It has failed. It lacks substance, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It is bound to fail. And not on one occasion he has offered any solution to the government. Not on one occasion he offered any solution, because their objective is not to work with the government and to cooperate with the government in the fight against crime in Trinidad and Tobago. That is not the objective. That is not the objective. So, he spent his entire 45 minutes reading from newspaper clippings, repeating what people would have said and Tom would have said in the streets, and what people would have told them. But one thing I recognize that the honourable member, as well as his other colleagues, the last member who spoke, the member for St. Augustine, just skirted the issue of human trafficking. None of them else, no other speaker on the opposition side spoke of the issue of human trafficking. Because I wonder why.
Silence.
I wonder why. They talk about guns, they talk about drugs. Mr. Deputy Speaker,
Please. Right, again, member for Shogunas West, San Fernando East, St. Augustine, you know what I mean, Couva, North. Please, let's keep it. We are going fine. Proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And very soon, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm going to raise and I'm going to expound a bit on the issue of human trafficking, because we are talking about the Ministry of National Security and all of the matters that they're responsible for. And in prosecuting the case of human trafficking, Mr. Deputy Speaker, they hardly made any mention, or prosecuting the case against the Minister of National Security, they made no mention whatsoever on the issue of human trafficking, and I will speak about that. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have spoken for hours in this debate and on the previous occasion, searching the UNC to find ways and to find evidence to prosecute their matter against the Minister of National Security. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Minister of National Security did not engage in any action to dismantle the national security apparatus of Trinidad and Tobago. But we have to sit in this Parliament and listen to colleagues on the other side telling us why the minister is unfit to hold office. These are the same people, some of them are the same people who participated in a government that gutted the national security apparatus of Trinidad and Tobago. They have no moral authority whatsoever to come here and lecture to us about who should be appointed Minister of National Security or not, when they were exchanging and like a revolving door, changing Minister of National Security almost every year. They have no moral authority. This is the same group of people, part of a party that appointed, Mr. Deputy Speaker, a telephone operator to head an intelligence agency in Trinidad and Tobago. Was the Minister of National Security, this current Minister of National Security, Fitzgerald Ethelbert Hines, my good friend? He never engaged in that kind of behavior. He never brought his office into this kind of discredit. The Minister of National Security supported law enforcement, and he continues to support law enforcement, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But we have to sit in this parliament and listen to colleagues on the other side who cancelled an OPV contract exposing the state. And when the former Prime Minister was asked about it, she made a very famous statement that the war on crime is on the land and not the seas. And we have to sit here for 3 years enduring their non-cooperation and filibustering.
No. Again, withdraw. Right. Right, have a seat, okay? Have your seat, have your seat. No. Again, remember, I already ruled. I already did. Proceed, Lopino.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We have to sit here and listen to people and members opposite lecture to us when their history still haunts them and haunts the people of Trinidad and Tobago. They have no moral authority whatsoever to come and speak to us on crime. None whatsoever. It hurts me to sit in this chamber and to hear honorable colleagues on the other side. Honorable colleagues, I will call them honorable colleagues, because some of them, like member from Mayaro, Shogunas West is good, Mukamuto Manzanella, good people, they are good people on the side.
Address the chair.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Even including the member for Barrett Harris and one. They try their best. Try their best. But we have to sit here. We have to sit here and endure that. What is the case against the Minister of National Security? What is the evidence? Where did he misconduct himself? Where? Where did he bring his office into disrepute? Where? Mr. Deputy Speaker, you will recall the honorable member for St. Augustine read out a whole litany of bills where they allegedly supported the government. I recall, and she talked about the honorable member talked about the murders of young girls and women. I recall when the child marriage bill was brought in this parliament. When the child marriage bill was brought in this parliament, a temporary senator was appointed to oppose the bill. To oppose the bill. And when they got the political backlash from the population, they have to put their political tails between their legs and follow the PNM and support that bill. But interestingly, the member of Superior was absent. But the honorable member for St. Augustine want to come and tell us that the Minister of National Security should resign because he's not protecting young women? Political hypocrites, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Political hypocrites. They have no moral authority whatsoever. They need to reinvent themselves and come again. If that is possible, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It is not possible. It is not possible. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me tell you this. We support the Minister of National Security. We support him. We will continue to work with him because it is not only his responsibility, it is our responsibility. Our responsibility. Because we sit in a government so serious. Our leader, the Member of Parliament for Diego Martin West, trying to treat with the social issues, the things that attract our young male, especially, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to a life of crime, created a Ministry of Youth Development to give our young men a fighting chance. Because we recognize that to fight the scourge of crime and violence in this country, it is not about arming the police and arming the military, that we must have a soft and targeted approach to give our young men a fighting chance. All kinds of programs under the Ministry of Youth Development started off, incidentally, by the current Minister of National Security. All kinds of programs to give them a fighting chance. My colleague here from Tobago West, the Honorable Shamfa Kojo, under her ministry, a number of programs I myself would have participated, meeting some young men, talking to them. One of these programs is the Empower program, where some of these young men had no hope whatsoever. No hope. And these young men were pulled together, put into an incubator, where they were placed with mentors and ambassadors to work with them, to give them an opportunity to express themselves as young men. Some of these people and these young men couldn't even apply for a job because of where they live. Nobody would want to employ them. And under this program, we would have seen over 300 young men transition their lives. Young boys who would have been attracted to that gun culture and that culture of violence in Trinidad and Tobago. These are some of the things that we are doing, and these are some of the things that we must do as a country and as a government to save our young boys and those young boys who are attracted to a life of crime. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I can tell you, as a young boy growing up in a rural community, some of the opportunities that are available to some of our young men today, I did not have it. I didn't have it. There are now a litany of programs and opportunities for our young boys, and we have to ask ourselves, why are so many of them not participating in these programs to give themselves a fighting chance, and yet being attracted to a life of crime and violence? Why? Why? And they know that. The UNC is aware of it. They made absolutely no reference to these programs that we have put in place. None whatsoever. Because they don't want the country to know that. Because they believe that if you attack the honorable member for Laventille West and the Minister of National Security, it will create a political opening for them. The people are fed up with this kind of political posturing, you know. They are fed up, and all of us will face their collective wrath if we continue to conduct ourselves in this way. The government has a role to play. All of us have our role to play, and you, members of the opposition, honorable members opposite, if you believe that crime and violence will create a political opening for you to come on this side to sit, we may not have a country for you to govern. We may not have a country for you to govern. So stop that behavior. I ask you, and I plead with all members on the opposition, you have a role to play. Buckle down. There's a time for politics. We will go on the political hustings and we will fight it out. But the issue of crime and the issue of violence in Trinidad and Tobago, we must all put our collective hands on deck. And therefore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I turn to the issue of human trafficking. Because human trafficking falls under the purview of the Ministry of National Security. And I want to know what the Ministry of National Security is also doing with the issue of human trafficking. And I also want to know why the opposition, for some reason or the other, is skirting the issue. Why?
Silence.
I want to know. Mr. Deputy Speaker, a couple months ago, there was a firestorm in this country with respect to human trafficking. And members of Parliament, quoting a United States Department report, that members of the government might be involved. And it turns out that some members of the opposition believe that by the definition, members of the government, it refers to us on this side. It didn't turn out to be like that. It didn't turn out to be like that. And the honorable member for Naparima questioned the parliament as the prime minister during a prime minister question time as to what he was doing to treat with the issue of human trafficking in the government. And the prime minister responded appropriately. Following the prime minister's response, we had former ministers that served in the UNC government came out and admitted that under the leadership of Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar, as she was then, that senior officials of the UNC were involved in human trafficking. Mr. Deputy Speaker, members of the cabinet, of the UNC cabinet, admitted. One of them claimed that he was responsible. He was responsible for an investigation, and there is a report. And the member for Siparia, the former prime minister, did absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. The report was buried.
I want to come here and cry.
And today we have to listen to members opposite.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise on Standing Order 48-6 as it relates to what the member just said, as it relates to the member for Siparia. He's imputing improper motives. And additionally, 48-1, this matter is under a police investigation.
Okay, members, please, members, overrule.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me read. And I'm quoting Mr. Deputy Speaker.
But before you proceed, your initial speaking time has elapsed. You have an additional 15.
Oh, certainly, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Proceed.
You get 20 minutes. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am quoting a Guardian report of February 26, 2023.
This year.
2023. Former UNC Minister and Senator Devan Maharaj has claimed that between the years 2020 and 2015, internal investigations by the UNC confirmed allegations that some party members were involved in human trafficking. And I wonder if that is the reason why that in their attack and their political prosecution for the member for Laventille West, the Minister of National Security, that the issue of human trafficking was almost never mentioned in this debate.
That's a crime.
Never mentioned in this debate. And this is what he said. In a statement to the media, Maharaj said he wished to confirm the statement by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley that particular members of the UNC were involved in human trafficking. And I quote, "I can confirm that I assisted in these investigations. I can also confirm that the allegations were confirmed to be true and correct. I confirm this as particular individuals who now hold high office in the party on a regular basis provided a regular supply of Venezuelan and Colombian prostitutes to persons within and without the party. I myself was approached on several occasions to utilize this service, all of which I refused." And today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have to listen to some of these same members come to talk about crime and come to prosecute the case against the member for Laventille West. Hypocrites!
And member, again, your last term, retract, and I'm sure you can use a better word.
Thank you.
No, retract first.
I retract.
Right.
Deceitful, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And to make matters worse, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to make matters worse, let me quote another Guardian editorial on Monday, March the 6th, 2023, by one Ramona Ramdale,
A member of the
another member of the UNC.
their colleague.
And this is what she said. And I quote the last paragraph. I quote the last paragraph of her article. What exactly has been done in Couva North to end human trafficking and prostitution? Since I...
Members, standing order. Member, standing order 53 again. In silence, I recognize Lopino, Borne West member.
What exactly has been done in Couva North to end human trafficking and prostitution? Since I was removed after making my last parliamentary contribution on the very subject. Why did opposition leader Kamala Persad-Bissessar select a certain candidate, even though she would have been privy to a report from Maharaj and possibly another from Dr. Munilal? Mind-blowing.
That is criminal.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the person who made that report offered themselves to the police. The matter is now under investigation. A statement was provided. And Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Watch your time, watch your time.
Again, members, please. Please. Address the chair. Address the chair.
Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Devan Maharaj, I'm reliably informed, gave a statement to the police, gave his statement to the police on the circumstances under which this matter of human trafficking in the UNC was handled. But after that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it makes matters worse because we're not easy as a country, you know. They wanted to attack Fitzgerald Hines, the member for Laventille West. And they want to give the impression that getting rid of him in the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago is going to solve the crime situation from people who cannot even look left and look right on their side. And, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I can tell you here today and the country that when that statement was given to the police and the investigators asked Mr. Maharaj for that statement to be certified by a justice of the peace. Guess who they brought as the justice of the peace? Archbishop Barbara Burke.
Former UNC senator.
Former UNC senator. What is happening in Trinidad and Tobago? Are we serious?
No, it's over there in the UNC.
What is happening to us? A former minister of a UNC minister giving evidence to the police about human trafficking in the UNC, about matters in the UNC.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise on 48.6. The member is speaking of an active police investigation. Is he willing to adopt and take ownership of what he is saying in this particular parliament?
Silence, silence. Again, the sub judice standing order is clear. Member, you accept responsibility for your comments?
Full responsibility,
Proceed.
Mr. Deputy Speaker. Full responsibility. You bring a very, very serious matter. A witness, a whistleblower, giving evidence of human trafficking in the UNC. And you brought Senator Barbara Burke as Justice of the Peace. Of all the justices of the peace you can find in Trinidad and Tobago, I am advising my colleague from Laventille West, without breaching any protocol and bringing your office into disrepute, exercise your constitutional role and responsibilities to ensure that the interest of justice is protected in this matter. That the interest of justice is protected. But as I wind on this debate, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to tell this country that the UNC is not the answer to the crime problem that we all face.
No, member, again, retract and please retract. Stand and retract, please. Let's retract. I retract.
Painfully retract.
Member.
I retract.
Unreservedly.
Right.
Right. Proceed, Lupino Bonares.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, and it pains me, as it's paining the Honourable Member for Laventille West, to inform the people of Trinidad and Tobago that as we work and we continue to provide policies and programs, we will utilize our 22 votes on this side of the House to ensure that we do all that we can to protect the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We will continue to work with our colleagues in the entire Caribbean to ensure that our borders are protected. We will ensure that young boys and young girls and the issue and the plague of human trafficking is eradicated, the scourge of human trafficking, be it inside of this parliament or outside, be it within the UNC or outside of the UNC, wherever they are, we must all go after them and protect the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this motion that was brought to this House against the member for Laventille West and my colleague, the Honourable Minister of National Security, it is hopeless, it is void, it is hypocritical, and it should be destined to fail, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I beg you. Thank you very much.
I recognize the member for Tabakit.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and thank you for recognizing me and giving me the opportunity to bring some semblance of respect back to this very important debate on our motion against the Minister of National Security. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we just heard from the Minister of Public Utilities. The Minister of Public Utilities was the fourth member of the government to speak on this motion. The fourth member of the government to speak on this motion and give us every reason to talk about the UNC and what is happening in the UNC and present no defense for his colleague, the Minister of National Security. And there's a reason for that. There is a reason for the deliberate misunderstanding of the motion, which I'll read into the record so that the next person entering the debate on the government's end has some idea of what we're doing here today, because clearly they are lost. And I listened, especially towards the end, for the Minister of Public Utilities, and very timely, because within my debate, I do intend to address the issue of human trafficking and how the Minister of National Security is using his good office to rid Trinidad and Tobago of this scourge. Now, mind you, in your entire contribution, asking about what is being done about human trafficking in this country, you forgot that the minister responsible is under question here today for his inaction. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for proving our point that the Minister of National Security has been unable, incompetent, incapable of using the office of the Ministry of National Security to resource those who are in a place to treat with the scourge of human trafficking. You have not been able to do that. So for all of this, and Mr. Deputy Speaker, I do not like to participate in revisionist history. The Minister of Public Utilities stood here and rightfully pointed out that a question was asked by the Member of Parliament for Naprima in this House. That the question was asked based on a report that is in the public domain. And instead of standing up as a responsible government, instead of standing in defense of your colleague to say that from the office of the Ministry of National Security as a competent Minister of National Security, since the time that question was asked, Since the time the report was placed in the public domain, since the time it has been a topic of national conversation, we have done X, Y, and Z. The minister has been personally responsible for equipping the CTU, personally responsible for meeting with stakeholders and making sense of this thing so that you can treat the people of Trinidad and Tobago with the respect that they deserve. And don't come here and tell me that you do not desire to politicize an issue, and one day we will be on the platform and we'll be in the political hustings, and then be totally political in your response here today. Now, and you know, we as a sensible group of people, I assume, I want to take this opportunity to remind members here, all of us gathered here today, all 41 persons who hold a seat here, that we have the distinct privilege and honor to sit in the House of Representatives. The representatives part, let me remind you who you represent. You represent the good people of Aruka Maloney. You represent the good people of Tabaquite, the people of Naparima, of Diego Martin Central. You do not stand here and tell me your only space to express confidence in the Minister of National Security is because he's where Balizeta and you's where Balizeta. Because that's all we're getting from you today, you know. That you are in support of the Minister of National Security because he is of the same political party that you have. Don't, no.
Members. Tabaquite, no problem. Go ahead. Member for Tabaquite, proceed.
Yeah. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will only acknowledge your statements here across the floor. I would not take on any interruptions by persons who are indeed, and with good reason, under fire. And so, you know, I had to just, there are more to the rebuttals to the Minister of Public Utilities, but I just wanted to start there because I found that particularly offensive. The scourge of human trafficking. I sat on a joint select committee this morning. The Ministry of National Security was represented. The counter-trafficking unit was present. They were present there. And what stood out was that they were unable to articulate a clear policy on some matters, and I'll go into that later on in the debate. And so therefore, that says to me, the role of the Minister of National Security is greatly misunderstood by those across the floor. While our arguments are indeed housed in the ever-present murders and criminality that face the people of Trinidad and Tobago, let us not forget that in this House, we also have a responsibility to hold members opposite accountable. That is a parliamentary responsibility. And so when they focus, members opposite focus on the legislative responsibility of Parliament, they do so because they are afraid of the accountability measure of Parliament. They are afraid of coming here and saying exactly what they have done with the 8 years in office, exactly how they have improved the lives of citizens, and exactly what they intend to do going forward, because they had a space to do that here in this debate, in a very important space in national security. And so the motion brought by my colleague from Barataria, San Juan, speaks to the minister and his responsibility for ensuring public safety, the maintenance of law and order, and the effective oversight of national security infrastructure. That's specific. Any one of the 4 members who have spoken here already from the government could have said, the Minister of Public Utilities asked for evidence. What evidence we have that we should have no confidence in this Minister of National Security? Because that's essentially what you're asking us. What evidence we, as the opposition, members of Parliament, are presenting to the population of Trinidad and Tobago and indeed this Parliament that we have no confidence in the Minister of National Security. And therefore, and then the Minister of Public Utilities said that he's living here, we are all living here, we are not living on Mars. But then I had to question that. Because if you have to ask me, what evidence do we have to say the Minister of National Security is ineffective? But then every member could acknowledge the increase in crime, the increase in violent crime. Then what are you saying to us? And then, my favorite part of the argument, well, it's not his fault, you know. It is all of our fault. Everybody's at fault because it's all of our responsibility to deal with crime. Well, there is only one person in this room who has a responsibility to advise the Cabinet of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on matters of national security. There is only one person in this room who has a responsibility to take an overarching view, take a look at every arm of our national security apparatus, and say to the Parliament, say to the Cabinet, this is what ought to be done. This is what we can be doing better. Take the data that they say they are receiving and utilize that for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Not one of them got up here today and said he did that. Not one. Not even in addressing the scourge of human trafficking, something that should trouble the minds of all of us. Even in addressing that and saying you intended to do that in a serious manner and in a very unserious way, never told us what the Minister of National Security has intended to do. And I know somebody is going to get up here and say the Minister of National Security is not responsible for executing, etc. And I agree. But he is responsible for guiding the Cabinet on issues of national security. And until somebody on that side could get up and say very clearly, this has been done and it worked. This has been done and it worked. This has been done and it worked. Then you have to agree with the motion. Because on the first recital, you have to agree that the Minister of National Security, through his vast and continued incompetence, has mismanaged the organs and departments of national security. You have to agree with that because unless you can demonstrate where, in the years since holding the office of Minister of National Security, this minister has been able to make an impact on the national security space, then you must agree with the motion. And if you don't agree with the motion, tell us it is just because you all wear the same color to go to your party meetings. That's all. Just tell us that. Right? Just tell us that. But don't come here and tell us. We have to be very serious. We have to be very serious when we are doing things. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in my preparation for this debate, I pull the Hansard document because you know it's always instructive to listen to the first responder. For those of us who have been debating for a while, you understand that the first responder to any motion outlines exactly where the opposite side is going. That they give you the extent of the arguments where that will be drilled down by further speakers. And so they give you the full view of what is to be argued against the motion, because they're arguing against the motion brought by the opposition. Luckily, fortunately, the first responder was the person in the hot seat himself, the Minister of National Security, sent to defend himself. Now, I don't know why. Perhaps the member for Aruka Maloney had great difficulty in finding somebody to lead the defense of the minister. And I empathize. I empathize because it is very difficult for somebody to be in the House of Representatives and representing real people and have to go to your office day. I can't imagine what's going on with them, but I have to go to your office day and say, you stood up in Parliament and you said you have confidence in the Minister of National Security and your constituent is hiding from criminals. Imagine that. I can't imagine. I understood the difficulty. I understood the
Members,
Mr.
please.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, you don't have
Please.
to worry, I am not easily disturbed at all. I am not easily put off.
Probably I need to get on my legs to make the point. There is a certain decorum that has to take place. So again, members, in silence. Proceed.
Thank you, as always, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for your protection. And so, the entire space, the entire argument of the government as presented by the Minister of National Security himself had nothing, curiously nothing, to do with the work that he has done thus far as Minister of National Security. So that's already telling you what we're dealing with. That if you could stand up to defend yourself about your job as Minister of National Security and you can't say what you're doing, it means there's nothing. It means there's nothing. So the minister started with an attack on the mover of the motion. And that says something to me. That says already you are without substance. That you attack the mover of the motion instead of attacking the motion itself, which seeks to say that you are incompetent. You start to tell us about Barataria San Juan. So you start bad. But then, interestingly, the minister goes on to talk about his time in secondary school, in the cadet force, and in the TTPS. Now, if this was leading somewhere, as a debater would know, I would have no issue. If this was leading to say, in my time as a member of the TTPS, I learned X, Y, and Z, and therefore now, as the minister charged with the responsibility of national security, I can unequivocally state that in the cabinet of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, I have brought before the issues of the TTPS that members of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service require X, Y, and Z to function in their capacity as the frontline crime fighters. If the Minister of National Security had used the opportunity to say, listen, I was a member of the TTPS, so I understood that it was my role to advocate for some sort of recognition of the members of the TTPS for their valiant service during the COVID-19 pandemic, or a recognition that they deserve more than 4% for the work that they did, or a recognition that they deserve a proper process with the minister to get a police commissioner, or a recognition that members of the TTPS are currently working under standards, under conditions that are not conducive for the job that they have, then I would have accepted that. But you didn't say that. But you did not say that. You stood up and you told us you're a member of the TTPS, and that means something. It means you're supposed to be doing a better job. It means you're supposed to be doing a better job. But he left, as he told us, because the Minister of National Security, again, in a defense of himself as Minister of National Security, tells us that he left the TTPS to become an insurance agent. This is serious, you know. We are excellent. And you know, and I realized why, Mr. Deputy Speaker, through you, I know why, I can only guess as to why the Minister of National Security did that. Because having recognized that he has failed as Minister of National Security, he is perhaps looking at the insurance sector for a new job, because that could be the only reason you're bringing it into the debate. The only reason you're bringing it in.
Members, please. Members. No. Members. Right? So again, member, let's retract, please.
Again, I painfully retract.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. While we engage in a motion that seeks to have the House, that this House express its lack of confidence in the Minister of National Security, I would like to put forward that the behavior of the Minister of National Security in this House today should alone be argument enough for why we must express our lack of confidence. That you cannot...
Again, members, two wrongs do not make a right. He stood up. I will have to hear his standing order before we can proceed. But other members cannot make comments at the same time. Right, proceed. Let's proceed. Member for Tabakit.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Minister of National Security continues to make my point over and over and over. So every time, I don't know, and I think perhaps I should put it on the record today that these proceedings are televised. These proceedings are on YouTube. And so that when you behave a certain way, people see you. Okay? So, and as we discuss the contribution of the Minister of National Security, who again, has a lot to say across the floor today, but very little to say in his own defense on the 28th of April. Very little. And so, the Minister of National Security used his 45 minutes in laying out what the response of the entire government bench against this motion would be. And he came with his resume. He came here to bring to the Parliament all the places he worked, and this is the argument that he should be the Minister of National Security. And I heard it today from the Minister of Public Utilities, and I believe the Minister of Energy raised it on the last day, that what have we brought to the table? How has the minister put his office into disrepute? Is that the low bar that we are setting for ourselves, Mr. Deputy Speaker? Is in any job, in any space, in any part of this world, there's a performance assessment. You must assess the performance of a person who holds an office. If we cannot come here as a parliament which has a duty to hold the executive to account and be very honest about whether or not a person is performing in the office that they hold, then what are we doing? What are we doing, Mr. Deputy Speaker? If the member for Laventille West or any of the opposition, of the PNM members, of the government members, cannot say with the evidence that they seem to have to keep him in office that he has been performing admirably, average at least, that he has been doing well, then we could say, okay. But they have not been able to do that. As a matter of fact, they will not even address the fact that since taking office, we have seen the highest recorded number of murders in this country's history. And they take it as some sort of badge of honor, because I heard the Minister of Public Utilities raise it, had a discussion of a revolving door and changing Minister of National Security, right? If you cannot be honest with yourselves and honest with the population to say that the Prime Minister, as the head of the cabinet, is taking a good look at the performance of his ministers and ensuring that they are serving the people of Trinidad and Tobago, then you're telling us that you are not willing to do that. That is not PNM policy, that you are not willing to assess the performance of anyone there, and in particular, the Minister of National Security. And so we have a major problem. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as we look at what the role of the Minister of National Security is, because that is what we're here to assess. We are here to assess whether or not the person in the member for Laventille West, whether or not in the years he has served as the Minister of National Security, has been able to effectively utilize the apparatus of the state under his responsibility to bring about relief to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So that took me to the mission statement of the Ministry of National Security, or what their mandate is. And I'll read that out for the benefit of the House and certainly for the benefit of the Minister. That they operate under 3 general areas of responsibility: the maintenance of law and order, public safety, and defense against aggression; the management of disaster preparedness and relief, which the member for St. Augustine ably dealt with already; and the monitoring and control of the flow of persons into and out of the country, immigration. Correct? So as I said before, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I sat in a Joint Select Committee meeting today. It was a public hearing. I really genuinely hope that the Minister of National Security took a look at it. If not, again, go back on YouTube, you'll get it. Because today, I had the cause to ask. In 2019, under a different Minister of National Security, there was a registration process for migrants from Venezuela in 2019. Having due consideration for the pandemic, etc. But in the time since this Minister of National Security has taken office, the Ministry of National Security in that Joint Select Committee today, in a public hearing, had the cause to tell us as committee members that there was no policy directive since that 2019 registration.
What?
So we have to ask ourselves, 2019 into 2020, 2020 was an election year. 2021, this minister took office. In all that time, as the person, and I will also read into the record, because I've realized a lot of persons in this house, even though they hold high office, have a real problem with social studies, civics, and basic understanding of governance. Basic understanding. The minister, under Westminster system, the minister has a responsibility to decide on policy, and they are accountable to the Parliament for their decisions. And that the minister is responsible to report to the Parliament, also to advocate in the cabinet for the advancement of their policy under their remit. So the Minister of National Security is telling, he lost this opportunity, but I searched in his response. I read through the Hansard of his response more than one time because I said, maybe I missed it. Sometimes things get lost in the crosstalk. But I said, maybe the minister came to us in defense of himself in this motion and said, since taking office, I would have advanced X, Y, and Z policy on immigration, having due regard for what happened in 2019 and the registration process, having due regard that so many persons are left in limbo, persons who have been registered, who may want to be registered, that they are in limbo, that the Minister of National Security understands that persons have been entering our country legally and illegally, and they reside here now, and that is a real problem facing Trinidad and Tobago. That is directly, listen to me, Mr. Deputy Speaker, directly under the remit of Minister of National Security. And in 45 minutes of what could only be described as old talk, the minister never not once addressed the serious issue of immigration in Trinidad and Tobago directly according to his website. Directly under it. That the minister, Mr. Deputy Speaker, can listen to the claims. This is an article in the Newsday from March 31st, 2023, that, it is reporting an event, so yes, it must be true. It's not an editorial, right? So, that Mr. Deputy Speaker, yes, don't worry, like I said, I'm not easily disturbed, that the permits, etc. The minister said in January on our radio talk show that permits will be extended again. But to date, this has not been done. So that as the advisor to the government on policy, on immigration policy in Trinidad and Tobago, I sat in our Joint Select Committee and I felt so bad for the technocrats, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I felt for the technocrats, I felt so terrible for them that they have to answer a policy question when I know the questions of policy comes from, the issue of policy must come from the Minister of National Security. Luckily, I knew I was coming here to debate this today, so that they will get their space, their due justice, because they are there to execute a policy handed down by a cabinet, handed down by, hopefully, a competent Minister of National Security, but they do not have that. That does not exist. And so the technocrats, members from immigration, members from the CTU, all sat there, and unfortunately, all they had in place was a policy from 2019, which was put in place under a previous Minister of National Security. And you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, at another time, we did in fact bring a motion of no confidence under that minister. And the Prime Minister clearly agreed because that minister was moved, right? But had we known, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that worse was to be found amongst their benches, we would not have done that. Had we known that this is where we would end up in 2023, I mean, and you have to be, Mr. Deputy Speaker, again, you know, in the contribution,
I rise to say that the member is still...
Oh my God.
Order. What standing order?
What standing order?
Honourable members, I think it would be a good time in order to suspend the sitting. Member, you are entitled to an additional 15 minutes, right? When we resume, you will start your 15 minutes accordingly. So at this time, honourable members, this House is suspended for 30 minutes.